Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Eric Coleman with IIST and I will be the moderator for today's webinar, Gain Full Control of Your Projects with Integrated ALM by Dr. Magdy Hanna. We're excited you're able to join us today. Set aside an hour to attend this webinar. This webinar is one of a series of free webinars to introduce the topics as well as the presenters of the upcoming PSQT conference in San Diego, California, August 14th through the 19th at the Sheraton San Diego Hotel and Marina. PSQT is the only conference that focuses on practical best practices in every aspect of software quality assurance and testing. The ongoing theme of the conference, Practical, Proven, Feasible, keeps the focus on what works. To learn more about this exciting conference, visit psqtconference.com. You may submit your questions at any time by using your question box in your GoToWebinar window. Today's presenter will answer as many questions within the time allowed at the end of today's session. This webinar is being recorded and will be made available for viewing within 48 hours at psqtconference.com. At the end of today's webinar, you will be asked to complete a short survey. At IIST, we strive to provide the highest quality educational resources for the public and would appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to complete this short survey. I will now turn the webinar over to today's presenter, Dr. Magdy Hanna. Dr. Hanna?
Thank you, Eric. Good morning or good afternoon, everyone there, depending on your time zone. Thanks for joining me for this 1 hour to share with you what I believe about integrated lifecycle management. It is true that I will do this webinar in the context of Rommana ALM, which is an ALM tool, but it's most important for me that you understand the concepts behind integrated lifecycle management. Before I start, let me just show you this picture here. And this is showing you, this picture shows the different components of an ALM methodology and tool. As you probably know, ALM stands for Application Lifecycle Management. And in order to speak about ALM, we have to be speaking about all the activities, all the tasks, all the phases, if you will, of a project or an application lifecycle. And I say this because some people speak about requirement management by itself as being an ALM. Well, it is true that it's an application lifecycle management phase, but it's not an ALM by itself because documenting because requirement management by itself does not help you build an application. The same is true with test management or use case management or change management or whatever. So really an ALM means that you have a methodology and tool that encompass all these things together, but most importantly they are one tool. They're not a set of tools. I mean, you probably are aware of the fact that some people out there buy one tool from one company, buy another tool from another company, and they try to use them together to manage the life cycle of application. That's why we kind of invented the term integrated application lifecycle management. And integrated here means that they're all together as one piece. They share one common repository in the middle, which contains all the project artifacts. So all the requirements, all the test cases, all the test sets, the use cases, the changes to the requirements, all the documents that are related to those, all the collaboration that has to happen between the different project, the members of the project team. Everything you can ever want to manage, is inside that repository, and they all share one repository, but most importantly, they share one user interface. All right. Recently, a survey by a company called the RQX Global found Rommana, and Rommana, by the way, is the tool that I'm talking about. And you might think that what is the relationship between IIST and Rommana? There is no relationship except the fact that I am the chairman and CEO of IIST. I'm also the chief architect and CEO of Rommana Software, and I have architected Rommana ALM to encompass all the practices that we have been teaching at IIST. Remember, IIST is International Institute for Software Testing, is mainly professional development and the training and certification organization. So we've been teaching things since 1999, and over the years, of course, we invented our own methods of doing things, our own methods of requirement management, our own methods of test management, creating test cases, test automation, all that stuff. And people have always asked, what tools out there in the market that do the things that we teach, or do those things the way we teach them? And my answer all the time in the older days was, I'm not aware of any tool that does what we teach. Over the years, I said, let's just architect our own tool that implements all the things we teach at IIST. So really the things within Rommana ALM as an integrated application lifecycle management tool, it's really a set of methodologies, not just a tool. Remember, a tool by itself, it does not do anything. So another aspect of an ALM is the methodology behind the tool. If I give you a tool that does not have any methodology behind it, and it lets you do things any way you want to do them, then it's not really a good tool. Why? Because it does not help you. It does not coach you to do the right things. It probably sometimes allows you to shoot yourself in the foot by doing the wrong things without warning you about the wrong things. So to me, an important part of an ALM is the methodology itself, and the tool must always enforce this methodology and supports it and prevents you from making mistakes or violating this methodology. Of course, as long as this methodology has been proven to work, has been proven to produce better results. So as I said, we did not implement anything on ALM until people said, we want to be able to do test design in this manner. We want to be able to document and manage requirements in this manner. We would like to be able to create the link between test cases when they fail and issue reports in this manner. So when people told us that these things work and that's what they want to do, that only then we decided to incorporate them into Rommana. So as you can see from this chart, and I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but the truth is Rommana was found to be the best ALM tool and the best requirement management tool, and also the best cloud solution, because when you could actually use Rommana ALM in the cloud, very pure cloud. You don't need anything on your desktop on your machine. You just use the browser to access all the functionality. I should not brag too much about this because many other tools out there in the market do the same. However, for whatever reason, that's documented in the report from RQX Global, which is also available on the website. For some reason, this company found Rommana to be the best cloud solution. So as I said here, one central repository, there must be a lot of collaboration between different members of the tool, whether your project is agile or not. You always want collaboration. It seems like we started to speak about collaboration only when we started to use Agile and we started to have Agile projects. I've been teaching people collaboration maybe even 10 years, 12 years before Agile ever started 15 years ago. So collaboration is very critical for any project, whether it is Agile or non-Agile. In fact, many of the projects that used a non-agile project, a non-agile methodology, when you look at them and you look at the reasons why they failed, you find out the main reason of failure of any project is a lack of collaboration between the different members of the project team. When people start working in isolation, that's when we start having a problem. All right. More about ALM. It should be available as either hosted on your premises or actually on the cloud. So you can use it in the cloud. You can download it and install it and so on. But as we said, that the simplest way to use it is in the cloud, because it does not require you to install anything at all. And before I forget, it is very critical for any methodology, in my opinion. Any methodology, it doesn't matter if it is from Rommana, ALM, or whatever, is to provide seamlessness between agile and non-agile projects. Because, excuse me, we don't have actually a company that uses agile everywhere. There are some places some projects that use agile, some projects that are still waterfall or non-agile, and even within agile itself, you all probably know we have different. So the flexibility of a tool and the flexibility of a methodology to allow you to shift between agile and non-agile, and even shift between different flavors and different levels of rigor and formalities within the agile methodology. That's very critical. That's how Rommana ALM was implemented. Before I forget, Rommana is really, if you're wondering, it's an Egyptian word which I used to mean a pomegranate. And there is a reason for that. It's kind of metaphor for the level of integration between the pieces in the pomegranate itself, between the seeds inside, and of course the quality. And I just happen to like pomegranate on my own because it is known to be the highest in nutritional value and the highest in antioxidants. So I refer to this as the quality and the value. Now, if you want to look at any ALM methodology or a tool, you want to look at the things it allows you to do. Instead of going through the list, and this, as Eric said in the beginning, this presentation is going to be recorded, and it will be available for your viewing at a later time, so you could actually go through all these slides on your own. But I don't want to waste your time going through all this text. We have here is the different things that a requirement management or user story management component should do for you. So I want you to use this list sort of as a way to evaluate, to look at other tools. These are not only the things that Rommana ALM supports, but also the most critical things that it must be supported. If a tool does not support these kind of functionalities, then it's missing. And of course, you're always going to rank those things depending on how important they are for you. Okay. So for example, what if a customer submits a change request? How does change request become a requirement? What's the difference between how does the tool differentiate between a change request and a requirement? As we know in software engineering, a change request is when it gets submitted by a customer based on something they wanted or something they saw that it does not work exactly the way it's supposed to work. Those is submitted change request. Of course, there is a fine line between a change request and the bug report, or change request and the issue report. And that's very important, because sometimes your customers will submit an issue or an issue report. In fact, it is not a bug. That's why we don't use the word bug report within Rommana. Outlook has been giving me a hard time. I don't know why. So it always displays that message. When it displays the message, you can see the Outlook screen as you saw. So, as I said, we don't use the term bug report within ALM tool, and I wish and I hope no other vendors and no other methodologies would use it, because a bug means that something went wrong, and when a tester finds a problem when a tester finds a problem, it does not necessarily it is a problem. And more importantly, when a customer finds a problem, it does not necessarily mean that it is a problem. So we refer to it as an issue, and an issue could be almost anything. It could be as simple as a misunderstanding of the customer or the user of how the functionality works. It could be a question, it could be something they wish to see but they didn't see, and it could be a wish that the user wanted it to have in the tool. So that's why an issue report is something submitted by a customer or by the tested team. With the same token, a change request is also something that has been submitted by the customer or by a member of the project team. In both cases, someone goes and analyzes those either change requests or issue reports and determine if they're supposed to be actually treated as a new requirement or not. So a tool should allow you to create a new requirement that you could also, and that's part of requirement management slash change management slash issue management. You should be able to create a requirement based on a change request that's submitted, because not every change request submitted by a customer or by someone is going to be implemented. When it is determined that it will be implemented, then it becomes a requirement. And now from that point on, it gets treated as a requirement and not anymore a change request. All right? The same is true. An issue report submitted by a customer or by even a member of the test team, it remains an issue until someone says we are going to fix it, or there is nothing to be fixed, but rather this is a new feature. So once it is determined that it is a new feature, then it becomes a requirement in its own right, and so on. So as I mentioned before, collaboration is very critical in any ALM tool. Now, we always deal with requirements, but we always forget that there is in the mind of the business user, there is a sort of a business area, a business function that it gets performed on the business side. So it's important to be able to create the mapping or the association between a requirement and a business function, because so a given business function, whatever that is, it could be approving a claim, it could be submitting a claim, it could be determining whether the claim is right or not, it could be determining whether we should pay the claim or not, and that's in the insurance side. If we're talking about any other application, banking, for example, we could there might be a business function that says opening a new account or closing an account or whatever. So those are the business functions that the business care about. Now, any one of those business functions or functional components, as we call them, have a bunch of requirements. So you got to be able to create the mapping between a given functional component or business function and the requirements. And vice versa, by the way, you could have a given requirement that really touches on multiple functional components or business areas. And that's why the relationship between functional components and functional requirements is really many-to-many relationship. Now, in my opinion, when we speak about requirement management, it's very important to make sure that we create that kind of association between business functions and requirements, and we have to be able to express that relationship in terms of a many-to-many relationship, right? Now, of course, it's a very critical part of any requirement management methodology to have the traceability. Everyone speaks about requirement management, speaks about traceability. And when we speak about traceability, you got to be thinking about traceability of everything to everything. You got to be able to put your hand on a requirement and be able to see all the scenarios that have been created out of that requirement, all the test cases that have been created from that scenario, all the all the issue reports, if any, that have been created when some of those test cases have been created. If you put your hands on a requirement, you should be able to see if that requirement came from the user directly, or came as a change request, or was initially created as an issue report. That's kind of traceability back to the source. You should be able to do reverse traceability, meaning that if I look at an issue report that has been created, I need to go back to find out which test case failed, and because of which that issue report was created. And if I'm looking at the test case now, I should be able to trace back to whichever scenario that this test case belonged to, or to whichever test set that test case is a member of. Because if we're going to believe that a test set is a collection of test cases, then I need to go back and say this test set that consists of 30 or 35 test cases. Now those 3 test cases failed. Now I have to be able to trace this back to the requirement, or to the change request, or to the issue report, or whatever. Because when we fix problems, we will create possibly new test cases. So a test case could be linked back, not necessarily to a requirement. I've seen this all the time, that people say, let's create the traceability between requirements and test cases. Well, it's not only requirements that have test cases. Issue reports can have test cases, and I can create new test cases for issue reports without converting those issue reports to requirements. So I don't have requirement. All what I have is an issue report. The GoToWebinar framework tells me now my voice is loud. I'm not sure why, but I'll put the microphone away from my mouth a little bit. Actually, it says not. So if everyone is hearing me fine, I'm assuming. Let me look at the questions here. No questions, no comments. I'm going to assume that everyone hears me fine. All right. Now, again, if you're working on requirement management, remember all this, we're still talking about requirement management / user story management. And guess what? As you can see, I put them in one slide, meaning what? There has, as I said, there has to be seamlessness between the way we deal with requirements and or user stories. There is no difference between them. A requirement or a user story, it's a statement that shows something, some capability of the system. There is no reason to differentiate between them except in the format we write them and the level of details we put in a user story versus what we put in a requirement. If you talk about requirement management or user story management, you always have to speak about the difference between functionality and quality. Now, it's interesting to see that most of the people working with requirement management, they always focus on functionality, functional requirements. Now, this is enforced also, or this is forced on us when we use user stories. If you look carefully at the use of the user stories in Agile projects, and this is, in my opinion, one of the limitations, if you will, of user stories. You find that user stories are focusing so much on what we expect the system to do, because the format of user story is always what? It says, as a certain role in the application, I would like to be able to do this. And with that being said, and with that kind of format, you'll find that user stories actually sort of ignores completely all the quality requirements that has to do with performance and stability and scalability and security and all that kind of stuff. Of course, intelligent people have gone into user stories, modified them, and worked around that, and were able to do something to allow user stories to describe those kind of quality requirements. That's why I say any methodology you use or any tool you use for requirement and user story management should allow you always to differentiate between functional things that come from the system versus quality things that come from the system. And of course, you might say, what is the difference? The difference is only in the way we implemented those things. All right. When developers go and implement functional requirements or functional user stories, I'm going to call them that, although people really don't use the term functional user stories. When you implement functional things, you write some design, you write some code, and you write some test cases to implement that. When you implement the quality requirements or quality user stories, which kind of a new term that I use, the way you implemented them is different, because you may not even have to write code to do this. For example, what if the quality requirements we're talking about is about scalability of the system, okay, or about reliability of the system. There are other things we do, and I don't think I want to get into that level of details here. Quality requirements are always need to be implemented always, and there is a different way to implement those things by creating what I call a set of implementable actions. We may not have to write code or do design or anything at all, but we have to do certain things to allow the application to be either scalable or reliable or secure or easy to use or whatever. All right, enough about quality requirement management, although I believe I have another slide on requirement management. There is so much to do with requirement management. That's why if you see a tool that claims that they are a requirement management tool, they're really, by the way, I'm going to have to tell you this. What you see in front of you in those two slides in requirement management and what you see in Rommana ALM is really the result of my over 35 years of working as a software engineer. When I say software engineer, you know, my PhD is in software engineering. All my experience is in software engineering, whether it is test management or project management or anything else. As a professor of software engineering at the University of St. Thomas in Minnesota has helped me a lot, because all my students at the university doing a master's in software engineering were professionals like yourselves who have a job during the day and they're coming to do a master's degree in the evening and weekends. And I needed to teach those people the rules of software engineering. So what you're seeing here is, honestly, it's a true, honest software engineering. So when you see a requirement management or a test management tool or whatever, you really need to make sure that it is really supporting the rules of software engineering. For example, I don't know what it means to have a requirement without knowing what tasks and what risks and what actions associated with those requirements, because every requirement is going to be implemented, and implemented means that it has to go through the phases of a life cycle. So every requirement will have to be reviewed, analyzed. A piece of design has to be written for that requirement. A piece of code has to be written for that requirement. A test design has to be written for that requirement. A user interface will have to be done. All these are the tasks I'm referring to. And within a project, there is always a number of risks, and people speak about risks in general, but you always have to link a risk back to the requirement. Again, that's part of the traceability. So it's not enough to trace requirements to test cases, but it is important to trace risks back to requirements. And what that means is that if I have a risk, and a risk means that something it could possibly happen that would hinder me from delivering this requirement. So I have to link it back to which requirement we are talking about. Now, if you have attended some of my presentations or some of my webinars, you know that I strongly believe in the fact that we should not ever be taking a requirement as is and trying to write test cases for those. Why? Simply because a requirement, regardless of who has written it, is always incomplete, sometimes ambiguous, and sometimes inconsistent, and it's not good enough. In simply stated, I say requirements in general are not testable. And you can struggle all your life trying to write a testable requirement, and in my opinion, based on my own experience, there is no such thing. There is no testable requirement. There is a requirement. There are requirements that people write. And then you have to take them and make them testable. And how do you make them testable? You probably, you might have listened to me sometimes when I speak about scenario-based testing and scenario-based development. So I do strongly believe that you cannot just take a requirement and write test cases for it, or you cannot take a requirement and write code for it, but you have to be able to develop some scenarios. Scenarios are, in my opinion, very reasonable elaborations on requirements. There is no way to write code or to write test cases without taking a requirement and sort of decomposing it down to scenarios. I'll leave that subject to another presentation. I have a number of webinars that are already recorded. You can view them. They normally have the word scenarios in them, either scenario-based testing or scenario-based development and so on. So you can view those webinars at another time. All right. Now, as you probably know, when you start working on a big project, or even an agile project, there are some requirements or some user stories that would be assigned to different releases and perhaps different iterations or sprints within a release. And a reasonable tool or a reasonable methodology should allow you to allocate different requirements to different sprints or different releases, regardless if the project is agile or not. Relationships between the requirements is very critical. So I'm going to go ahead and skip over that and get into the scenario management component. As I said, you got to be able to break a requirement or a user story down to scenarios, because those scenarios are real elaborations on the user story. A user story without scenarios, I cannot even approach it. I cannot even take it and write any code on it, or I cannot even write any test cases for it. I understand that some people take user stories and they break them down to what they call implementation criteria or validation criteria or acceptance criteria, whatever you want to call them, and those might be close enough to what I call scenarios here, but again, working with different agile groups, I found that those acceptance criteria are not on the level of details that scenarios should be. So scenarios are really elaborations, low-level elaborations on scenarios, on requirements and user stories. That's why you can easily take a user story and write over 20 or 30 scenarios for that. And scenarios are what you would use to write the code and you would use to write your test cases. Now, it's very critical to be able to take each one of those scenarios and link it back to the piece of the code that the developers have written. That's why a real ALM tool needs to integrate or support a code version control tool. Because I could see the scenarios, yes, but then if I want to know what piece of code has been written to implement that scenario, if I don't have a way of doing that, then that my traceability is incomplete. And of course, I can also trace the scenarios to the set of test cases that have been written, right? Now, scenarios are critical. I mean, to me, a requirement management / test management / ALM tool that does not support the concept of scenarios really is not helping me to do a lot. Why? Because let's look at risk-based testing, and we know that risk-based testing has been around for a long time, and there are books that have been written in on risk-based testing. And my question always to people, how do we manage risk? How do we assess the importance of things? And I find something very interesting. I find that people take a requirement and they start writing test cases, and after they write the test cases, they start doing some sort of risk-based analysis or risk-based testing to try to determine what are the most important test cases and which ones they're going to execute. Let me tell you something. By the time you finish writing your test cases, you already wasted time. You already wasted time. The purpose of a risk analysis or risk-based testing, in my opinion, is to save you the time you're going to spend in writing test cases that are not so important. That's why risk analysis is supposed to be happening before you write your test cases. Now someone says, oh, so we should do it on the requirement level then. No, because the requirements are very high level still. And the user stories, how am I going to do risk analysis on user stories? I'm going to say this user story is more important than this user story? No. Or this requirement is more important, or 2 times more important than this this requirement? No. When you take a requirement or a user story, break it down into scenarios. Now you've got something to work with. You got one requirement or one user story that has 35, 40 scenarios. Okay, now you look at those scenarios, and that's what you use to do your risk analysis. And the Rommana ALM has a very simple methodology to do what I call scenario-based risk analysis. I know my discussion now is very much tied to Rommana ALM as a tool, but I don't care what tool you use as long as you have this tool allow you to do real risk analysis based on something between the requirements and test case. I don't know what you call that thing. You know, you can call it anything you want. You don't have to call it scenarios. But risk analysis is always done on an entity or entities that lies between requirements or user stories and test cases. You cannot do risk analysis on test cases. You cannot do risk analysis on requirements. I'm saying this clearly for everyone else who has been working on risk analysis for a long time to challenge me on that. I have not been able to do reasonable and objective risk analysis for the purpose of risk-based testing on requirements or on test cases. All right. Change management. We already, I think, covered that. Change management has to do with when the user submits a change request. Now, that a change request could actually become a requirement in its own right, or it could be a change on an existing requirement. So a tool needs to allow you to do either one of them. Keep in mind, I know even that presentation sounds to be a promotion or a way to make you aware of Rommana ALM as a tool, but really honestly what I'm interested in is to teach you some of the software engineering discipline that I have been teaching people for years. Okay, and that's what we tend to forget when we take a tool out there and we start using it, and the tool does not support software engineering, and we tended to forget all the disciplines of software engineering. That's why when I look at some of the agile practices that are really very agile and very ad hoc, I get frustrated sometimes because I always question, where is software engineering here? Because so let's look at what we're talking about here. So please, although I keep mentioning Rommana ALM being the best tool and being the tool that we architected to implement all these ideas, please forget all that. I cannot help it. You know, I have a passion for the tool and for the methodology. So, but I want you to leave that out and focus on what I'm trying to tell you in terms of discipline and how we should practice through software engineering. All right. So what I'm talking about here is when a customer submits a change request. That change request could be almost anything. It could be nothing. It could be a wish that we will never attain to. All right. Or it could be some new functionality they're wanting to have in the system. Or it could be a change, whether it is minor or major, to existing functionality. And a reasonable tool that supports software engineering needs to allow you to treat a change request one way or another. So if it is a new requirement, then it becomes a new requirement. If it is a change on an existing requirement, then it has to link that too. It has to tell you that which requirement is that and what do we change in that requirement. But most importantly, if we were to change, if we were to take a change request and apply it to an existing requirement, and we make the change to the requirement, most importantly, what happens to the test cases and to the scenarios and to many other things that are associated with that requirement? Do we throw them away? Do we keep them and add to them? Or do we replace some of them by others? That's very important. That's change management. All right. Now, I have been teaching people how to do very effective regression testing for a longer time. There was a post that we had at the IIST website for a couple of weeks that says, how do you make your regression testing more effective? And the answer was impact analysis. Is to be able to perform some level of impact analysis. And impact analysis here refers to what? Refers to the impact of the changes that developers have made to the code and to the design. Once the developers make a change to the code or the design, things change. And that impact causes certain functionalities not to work anymore the way they worked before. Now, within Rommana ALM, we implemented the concept of impact analysis to allow developers. In fact, the word allow here is not the accurate term. It's to require developers, because the tool does require developers to provide impact analysis information. When they work on a change request, or when they work on issue report, or you work on anything, after they finish, they have to go in and provide the impact analysis information. Why? Because the test team needs to use those to improve the way they do regression testing. If we do not do regression testing based on impact analysis, then we're not doing the right thing. Then we're shooting in the dark. Well, we keep doing regression testing the way we have always done them, and we put out releases and we find out that some functionalities still not working the way they worked before. I see I have only about 15 minutes left, so and I'm very excited about this, and there is much more information there. So I'm going to let you read, because all these are things about how to enforce and support the rules of software engineering. I'd like to have the opportunity just to give you a glimpse at the Rommana tool. Okay. When you start Rommana, by the way, I must tell you that Rommana is now available for free use. You can use it for free, and it's just a reduced version. If you go to here, rommanasoftware.com, you'll see that you can actually request access to the full version of Rommana ALM for free. But of course, there's a minor limit there. Two limits actually. One limit is it's for up to 5 users. So you can submit a request here for up to 5 users, and you get your, of course, you need to log in if you're not currently, if you don't have an account, you have to register as a customer, so that we can have your record there, and then we can give you access to Rommana ALM for up to 5 users. That's a 5 limitation, the first limitation. And the other limitation is that you can do only one project at a time. So we don't really, with that free version, we don't allow you to do multiple projects. Okay, so one project at a time. But that should be good enough. Small project that you can actually do it, but the functionalities that you have access to are full functionalities. There is nothing that has been hidden from you. Everything that is done in the commercial version that we sell is available in that free version. Exactly. The only limitations, as I said, is the fact that there are 5 people only, and the other one is that it's one project only. So please feel free to do that if you would like to. So when you start Rommana, you get a list. What you see here on on those boxes, these are the different products and different projects. So let's just leave this. So all your projects are going to be here. So these are all the projects, and as you can see, we've been using actually Rommana ALM, as you can imagine, to manage the projects of Rommana itself. So these are the older releases, like release 10.2, 10.3, 11.1. They're all here, and these are the actual releases of Rommana, except probably the data inside those projects are not the most recent data or the up-to-date data, because they have been taken, they were taken as a snapshot of the project as a given point of time. So once you click on any one of those projects to open, you get the project screen, and the project screen looks like that. And what you see here is what we call the dashboard, and the dashboard gives you a number of things that might be of interest, like here. And all these, by the way, all these widgets, if you will, are configurable. You can decide on what you need to see. Okay, so if you click here, you can configure the dashboard, and you can choose which charts, which tables, or whatever you want to see. Okay. And if you scroll down here, this is user stories by status. Now, of course, this project is set to use user stories. If I wanted this project to use requirements as opposed to user stories, I can change that from another screen here that called the project activity screen. So I can change it here. So for now, I'm using user stories, but you can view user stories the same way as requirements. And here's the status. Here's the different user stories by status, and you can scroll further. These are the test execution by status. So here's how many test cases passed so far. And the nice thing about this user interface is that because it's a pure web-based application, everything is a link. So if someone is looking here at this red slice that says, okay, I got about 10.9% of my test cases failed. Okay, if you want to see what are those test cases, all what you have to do is to click on that red slice, and now it creates that, it puts that screen in front of you, which are those test cases that have failed, and you can look at them. And those ones that have not been executed yet, if someone wants to say why those have not been executed yet, you click on those and you can see them. And of course, it goes to any kind of level. So you can see the list here, and someone says, okay, well, I can see here all the test cases that have not been executed. Why this has not been executed? You click, it opens the test case screen, and you can look at the test case. This is really important because usability of a tool is very important. So that opens the test case screen, and it shows you the details of the test case. Not sure why this is taking time to open, but we'll let it open here. So you can click on anything. As for example, here the scenario number. If you're interested to know what scenario is that, you can click on that, and so on. It gives you all the details. Back here. So now let's move on because I have only 10 minutes left. And of course, if anyone is interested in a specific part of the tool, please feel free to share with me. Put a question in the question tab, and I can certainly address what you need. So I'm going to click here. So on the top here, here's again the usability of the tool. On the top here, you have all the entities you can deal with. Okay, you get the user stories here, and of course, if the project was set up to use requirements, this would have been a requirements. Here are the change requests. Here are all the test sets. Here are all the documentation and models I have. Here is the screen of reports, and there's so many reports in that tool that you can create. Here are all the ad hoc tests versus like here under the test sets. These are all the actual test cases. Rommana ALM supports the concept of ad hoc or exploratory tests, and they are here. So here are all the issues reports. If you're using use cases are here, and so on. There's everything here. And there's a lot of collaboration and stuff here, how to collaborate with the rest of the project team to initiate user review or a scenario review or whatever, or any kind of reviews, or even simply to post a question. So let me click on user stories here. So it gives me the list of all my user stories. And as I said earlier, we differentiate between functional user stories versus quality user stories. Okay, although user stories in general are treated by many people just as user stories, which focus mostly on the functionality. Now, if I click on any one of those, and as you can see here, everything is hierarchy. Now, someone says, really, is that true? I mean, I thought user stories are not in hierarchy. Wrong, completely wrong. If you deal with user stories have to be expressed in the form of a hierarchy, because you have the epic, you have the very large user story that you decompose to more user stories. And in most user story tools, they don't keep track of that. They take an epic or a very large user story and they break it down to 5 user stories. But if you're going to go back to sort of the parent user story, you can't keep track of that. So you can very much imagine this is a user story that has been broken down to those user stories. Okay, if I click on any one of the user stories, so let me click on this. And of course, the user story has a lot of details, and that's why it takes time to upload. So let me, I have multiple screens for that project to open, so let me log out that project for now. Close, yeah, here. So I got that open. This is the test case screen, so let me close that. So let me, because I had a different screen open, so let me open here. If I go to this project and open it, so user stories. Okay. And that's really an important thing about Rommana ALM. Although it allows you to have many screens open for the same project, it now starts taking time to, so as I suggested that if you open the test case screen that you're not using anymore, then close the test case screen. So we had to trade between performance and usability. The decision was made from the beginning to allow you to open more than one screen within the same project. But having done that, we found that this affects the performance. So that's why if you are going to start opening multiple screens for the same project, then you want to make sure to close any screen you're not using anymore. So here is, excuse me, here's the user story or the requirement screen. They look the same, but so here is the text itself. Someone says, what is this? A user story does not have a text like that. Well, if you don't put any text for the user story, well, guess what? Just put the title here. So put here, as a customer, I'd like to be able to place orders online. And that's it. But I refuse that. That's not detailed enough. So that's why we would have here some details of the user story and or the requirement. Now, here's even more important things. You see all these things are the different entities that are associated with this user story or the requirement. Okay, so we have so many things. For example, and by the way, when you see a yellow, 3 yellow dots like this, this means that there is some details down here. So because I don't see it here, so this means that we have not yet defined any risks for this user story, or we have not defined any actions or tasks yet. But we did define scenarios, for example, and we did define some custom attributes, and we defined some related user stories, some other user stories that are related to this user story. So if I click on any one of those, so let me click on scenarios. Oh, of course, someone was trying to test, just show things here. So these are not real scenarios, but what it tells you here are the list of scenarios. There are 2 scenarios that have been defined for this requirement. And here's a scenario number, the scenario name, the description, and so on, frequency of use. Let's just click on any one scenario. It doesn't matter which one. And of course, those are meaningless scenarios anyway. So just to give you an idea about what a scenario looks like and what are the different components of a scenario. As I said earlier, it's very important to be able to take a requirement or a user story and break it down into scenarios, because if you look at the user story by itself, it's not good enough to be tested or implemented. So as you can see here, a scenario has a number of things. It has a scenario title, has scenario description, and you can put anything here, and a scenario has expected behavior. Now someone says, is that like a test case? No, a scenario is a much higher level than a test case. But as I said, a scenario is something that lies between user stories and test cases. Before you can build the user stories for before you can build the test cases for a user story or for a requirement, you got to build the scenarios first. And for scenarios, you put the expected behavior, which obviously later on, when you take that scenario and write test cases as it is here, because you can create test sets here, you can create also ad hoc tests. Now, when you start doing this, the expected behavior of the scenario will become the expected results of the test case. But here's the risk analysis that I was talking about, and I'm gonna just stop after that. Because I have only 2 minutes left. So here's how you determine the risk of a scenario, or here's how you perform a risk analysis based on the scenario level. Every scenario has a frequency of occurrence, i.e. How often do we think this scenario is going to happen. It also has impact of failure, meaning that if it was to fail in production, what is the impact? Is the impact low or medium or high? There's also the probability of failure, which is what is the likelihood for this scenario to fail. And of course, we teach how to do this stuff because the probability of failure, some people say, well, I don't know. How would I know if a scenario is supposed to fail or not? There are certain things to consider when you look at the scenario and to try to determine the probability of failure. For example, if that scenario that's listed here is not explicitly stated in the requirement or in the user story, and most likely it's not in the user story because the user story does not have too much details anyway. So anyway, you determine the probability of failure, and based on these 3 factors, Rommana calculates directly a testing priority. It tells you the priority of this scenario is 1.33. That's out of 3, by the way. If I say, oh no, I made a mistake here, this is high, this number changes right there. So testing priority changes based on any changes you make here. All right, I will stop here. There's so much details. Please, if you are interested to use Rommana for a small project of a small team of 5 people, go ahead, request access to Rommana, and I thank you so much for being with me in this presentation sponsored by the International Institute for Software Testing and the PSEQT conference, and Rommana Software as the host for this webinar. I'll leave the webinar to Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Hanna. We do have a couple questions if you had a couple extra minutes just to go over those. There are 2 questions in the question box.
Very quick here, I'll address those. Okay, let me just, does this tool support integrations with DevOps? No, the answer is no. There's a bunch of DevOps tools, that DevOps are mostly about testing and development and build installation. No, Rommana does not have any link or integration with other DevOps tools, but we do integrate with other code version control tools. So Sabraya also asked another question, capability with other testing automation tools. So the question is, does it support the integration with other test automation tools? And the answer is yes. If you look at the slide in the very beginning, currently it is integrated with the that it's integrated with where is the link? Oh, here it is. UFT, the QTP, which is now called UFTP from HP. As we speak, we are implementing the integration with Selenium, because Selenium, as you know, is more of a free open source code. So it is currently integrated with UFT and also integrates with other bug tracking tools if you are interested in that. Eric?
Wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Hanna. I really appreciate your time today. And I want to thank everyone for joining us for today's free webinar sponsored by IIST, the leaders in education-based certifications and training. For more information on how IIST can help you or your organization, please visit www.iist.org. You can follow IIST on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube to find out more information about IIST news, events, and promotions. Thank you all again for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you, Dr. Hanna.